everybody. I'm Vivian Wang. This is my assistant, Christina. I never know how you say your last name.
Cisco.
All right. We are going to show you how I create one of my pieces. This is a rare opportunity because we have made this piece already once before. But let me show you from the beginning. From the beginning, there is a sketch. It's called Mongolian Brothers, and they are relatives of Genghis Khan. This is a commission piece, so we have a picture of the completed piece that was made several months ago. Oh yes, that's much better. And then we'll show you all the pieces here. I will then go away for 3 days and epoxy it, come back and explain to you how it was put together and the narration of the piece.
It's a unique combination of mixed media. We have stoneware, paint, gold leaf, gems, and then after that we have other elements that are in glass, and that's painted as well. Hands and feet that are glass.
Hands for the big guy.
Yeah.
We have a big guy here and a little guy. And then we have the little baby's head, which takes about 2 weeks in the kiln. And the big guy, which even takes longer in the kiln because he's over 5 inches in diameter. See? And he probably weighs about 20 pounds, just the head itself, because it's solid glass.
So where do you put the epoxy?
The epoxy goes into the cavities, onto the pieces. We put the epoxy around the hand. We insert the hand. Oh dear, this one won't go in. We're gonna have to fix it.
Well, I'll have to make that thinner.
And we want to show you a piece that came out of the plaster cast. It looks like this, extremely rough. So this hasn't been touched, it's just been taken out of the mold. And if you look closely, you'll see that there's a lot of irregularities in the glass, which all has to be hand sanded, which is called cold work. Then, after cleaning it up, then it becomes this very perfect glass shape, like that. Now the body is made in clay. I use slabs of clay, so it's made hollow. This whole thing is hollow, even though it weighs 20 pounds, and it is then taken out of the kiln. It's actually in the kiln only 4 days because it's ceramic. It goes up to 2,130 degrees, and it's stoneware, so it's very, very hard clay. It comes out and it's sanded a little bit. Then it's painted. I use casein paint, though I'm experimenting with some acrylics now, slow drying acrylics. But so far I have been using casein paint and I love it. It's an organic paint. In the old days, they used to make it with milk, like tempera was made with egg yolk. Now, I think they still use some kind of organic product in the paint because you really can't keep it. After a few days, it starts to have a very bad odor. Christina does the gold leafing and the placement of all the gems. I will now put the piece together for you. Okay, we'll see you in 3 days. Bye. We left you 3 days ago. And now the piece is finished. Okay, I am going to tell you what this piece is about. And Mongolian Brothers portrays Habatat Khan. He was born in 1186, the third of Genghis Khan's 4 sons. He's portrayed at the age of 10. The young boy sitting on his lap depicts Tului Khan, born in 1191. He's portrayed at the age of 5. Genghis Khan's 4th son. Both boys are wearing deals, a traditional Mongolian garment with a skirt at the bottom. The asymmetric clothing seen on the little baby's bodice are a popular Mongolian clothing detail. And Agadai was Genghis's favorite. His character and dependability were the reasons he made Agadai his successor than either of his two older brothers. Like all Mongols at the time, Agadai was raised and educated as a warrior from childhood and was part of his father's plan to establish a world empire. The choice of Agadai as Genghis's successor proved a good choice, as the political stability he established throughout Asia helped reestablish the Silk Road as the primary trading route between East and West. Although Tolui, the fourth son, also had strong military skills and was successful as a general, Genghis chose Agadai as his successor. After Genghis Khan's death in 1227, Tolui ruled the Mongol Empire for 2 years, following the tradition among Mongol nobles that the youngest son inherit his father's property. Tolui also had the largest and most powerful Mongolian army at that time. Nonetheless, he supported the choice of Agadai as Supreme Khan in 1229. Tolui died at the age of 41. Some historians say that at the request of shamans, he sacrificed himself to appease the spirits of a conquered land in order to cure Agadai, who had fallen gravely ill. Others say he died from alcoholism. Agadai is also said to have suffered from alcoholism. He died 9 years later after a drinking bout at the age of 55. So anyway, that's a sad story of them as adults. But they were very beautiful children, in my mind. Therefore, I produced this piece where they were pretty good-looking people.
So first we'll talk about this piece here, the Mongolian Brothers 2, and then later we'll introduce 3 pieces that are currently for sale. Here we start off with a clay piece. So these are pressed out, and then Vivian customizes their hairstyles, gives them their own unique personality, and so then she'll record images of the raw, like, greenware. And these are some molds. So all of these heads and hands and feet are then cast into molds. These are made out of plaster and silica, then they're cleaned out and they're filled with glass.
We're doing an ABC of how you create a piece from clay.
Yeah.
Right.
And then here are some of the molds. So these are basically crucibles for the glass to then melt in the kiln and become a casting. And this is the frit that we use. We've been using bullseye frit. This is the clear transparent, but we've also used gaffer in the past. I believe this one is gaffer.
Yes. Bullseye comes out more white. It's fired at a different temperature. It looks different. There are different things about it. Oh, I never asked you this, but when you're sanding it, is it easier to sand when you do cold work on it? Is it easier to do cold work, or are they about the same?
Tactile wise, the hardness is pretty equal. Gaffer gets less bubbles because bullseye gets this really pretty champagne bubble texture inside. So as I'm sanding, sometimes more bubbles will pop up in the bullseye one. So then we have to go back and fill those holes that surface.
But gaffer weighs much more than bullseye.
This is us figuring out how to load the kiln, and then they come out with little chunks of the plaster silica dust on them, and then we have to wash them in order to reveal the glass. And then this is just images of a video of me sanding. And so this is the texture. Once you sand and sand and sand the glass with water, of course, it becomes this like sludge of silica, and that's that white stuff that you see on top.
Oh, but look how it looks after it's all cleaned up. It's nice and smooth.
Yeah, little by little.
Yes. And Christina has a secret way of doing that hair, so it comes out perfectly. And we will not reveal her secret.
Okay. I was about to say, good thing you said it's a secret. And so here are some sketches that then Vivian does for the gold leaf placement and also the gem placement. And so this is the before, right? So these are the stoneware pieces that are, Vivian hand builds, fires, and then paints And then I go ahead and add tape to block off the areas that will get gold leaf.
So then she applies the gold leaf. Oh, here, she's going to show you what it looks like when it's stripped. Okay, then the gold leaf is applied when the tape is on. Then Christina takes the tape off, and then you'll get all these areas where you only have gold leaf.
Yeah, and then the gems are applied, and this was the piece before it got handed over back again to Vivian so that she could do all of the epoxy.
Which is the most fun part of making a piece. And I'm being really sarcastic because it takes days. Epoxy, you have to epoxy. Oh, do you have a picture of the foot?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Let me
Okay.
get to that part.
Okay. So here we have a foot. I'm going to insert it. So I put the epoxy like a donut shape at the top of the glass piece. Then it's inserted into the pan so you don't see the epoxy, but you only can get one part of the epoxy attached to the pan, which is the back of the pan. Okay, and then the rest of it is just one big hole, which then after the epoxy dries, you have to go back and fill up the whole hole. So it's really a long process. And the drying time is like many, many hours long before you even want to touch it, so that the glass piece won't move. The epoxy has to be completely dry. So usually I would put in the 2 feet and let it dry overnight before I touch that again. And that was the last part of it, the heads. But as you saw before, the piece was put on its back to put in the hands and the feet. After the feet dries, then you can flip it up and put in the rest of the pieces. Actually, you have to put it on its side. I don't have a photo. You have to put it on its side in order to put in one hand, let the hand dry, and then flip it to the other side to put the other hand in, which is the hand that's holding the baby.
Yeah, you put the hands and feet for the baby first or for the big guy?
The feet for the big guy, and then the feet and the hands for the baby, and then last would be the hands on the big guy.
Right, because he's cradling the kid.
This piece is not available. It was a commission piece. But now we're going to show you pieces that are available.
So this is part of the City Kids series that talks about immigrants coming into the United States.
Yes, because I was one of these immigrants. I was actually an immigrant in the 50s, and I saw how everybody was dressed. I was very interested in the way people dressed because I was from another culture. Came to the West and saw that people dress a certain way, and I wanted to dress that way. So it's like wanting to assimilate as soon as possible. I went to school. I learned English quickly because that's what happens when you're a kid. And I did really like the way Americans dress. So I dressed like them immediately. Well, the trench coat was an item that was very classic because children then did not really have a lot of children clothes. They were kind of clones of their parents' clothes.
Like a little mini-me.
Yeah, mini-me's, exactly. Flemish bunny. This piece is actually about 28 inches high. These bunnies grow up to 35 pounds, and they're just giant size.
So I'll insert a picture here.
Well, that one I think they're showing is like a 50-pound bunny. So a lot of these are pets, but of course, some people eat them, but I don't believe Americans eat them. I don't even.
Yeah,
I've
there's some European dishes that are rabbit.
Yeah, but not Flemish bunnies.
Oh, I don't know about those.
I would have to think that Flemish bunnies would be kind of tough because they're so big. So this is a clay version. This is how I started.
In greenware, we will add these metal rods so that it facilitates the flow of the glass. Imagine this piece upside down in a mold. And in order for the glass to flow freely into the ears, we needed those rods. And so when they come out of the kiln, really rough, and little by little, we sanded it. And this is the etching cream that we added. And then this is with paint.
It's painted on top, but I just used a very pale color so that it would still look translucent. I didn't want the piece to lose its glass quality.
And this is before gems and after gems. And then in the photography when we were taking photos.
So he's a city kid. He's wearing like little hand knit sweaters because in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, people always wore hand knit sweaters. I mean, they weren't all hand knit sweaters, but I remember in college, we would all be standing in line, you know, waiting to get into the cafeteria, and all the women would be knitting. Everybody knitted. Yes, and I managed to knit some vests for people because I didn't know how to really do a sleeve, you know, the cap of a sleeve.
Well, that gets more complicated.
Yeah, it was too complicated for me. But I know that hand knit look was really big then. And then, of course, now we can't even afford them, you know.
Yeah, now they're luxury items.
Right.
Well, here we have some foam wrapped around the head. Obviously, this is after photography, and this is how they get packed up and shipped to the gallery.
Right. Well, this is just the beginning of the packing. My shipping company, RSVP, they will take this, put it into a box within a box lined with styrofoam. They will take it to their warehouse and repack the whole thing again to make sure it's really secure. Because we find that is the most fragile point of the sculpture, is at the neck. I have seen my sculpture broken a couple times, and it was always at the neck. So we wrap it up securely.
Now moving on to another animal piece.
Yes, this is based on the Gosho dolls, which were Japanese dolls made for members of the court in the Edo period, called the Golden Period of Japan, where art, poetry, and music flourished. The Gosho dolls were very, very expensive dolls. They were always white, and I was able to achieve that whiteness with the bullseye glass to get that kind of opaque white look. The actual Gosho dolls were made with a paint that was made from crushed oyster shells. So that's how they achieved that white look. So they were given as gifts to each other in the royal court. They were very expensive, and there were dolls that were not to be played with. They were dolls to be displayed, as this doll is.
Now we're going to talk about the snub nose. Fuzzy, cute little monkeys.
Yeah, they have a flat nose. As Christina says, they have a Michael Jackson nose.
Yeah, they look like Michael Jackson with their nose.
So we assumed that they were also pets because the Chinese had pets. I mean, they had crickets for pets. They had mice for pets. I figured they must have had monkeys for pets too.
I mean, I'm sure that's like a royal luxury of having these exotic animals.
Absolutely.
So these three are available.
Thank you for looking at our video for the Glass Art Fair of 2022. Glass Art Fair of 2022. Habitat Galleries of Michigan. Goodbye.